Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and today's episode has got me in a phenomenal mood because today's entrepreneur not only has incredible energy in what she does, but she also has an amazing story that I know wherever you are in your wantrepreneur or entrepreneurial journey, it's going to inspire you to take action, which is so important. So let me tell you about today's guest. Her name is Jessica Panetta. As a registered dietitian with over 15 years of experience, Jessica has successfully transitioned from working in the clinical workplace to becoming a successful freelance dietitian. I love the freelancing part of her story. Within just 3 months of initiating freelance work on the Upwork platform, she successfully doubled her hourly rate from her previous position as director of clinical nutrition. And within the first year, she earned the top rated plus badge, which is awarded to the top 3% of freelancers on the Upwork platform. As someone who hires a lot of people from Upwork, I know how much that says about Jessica's work ethic, the results that she delivers to clients, and she is dedicated to supporting allied health professionals to follow a similar path and succeed in freelance work, which is why she founded her company, Prosper Allied Health, to equip them with the tools and guidance needed to thrive in this new realm of work, which for so many of us, it is very new. You can hop on Upwork and literally start your business that way. Her unique story and her commitment to helping others break free from limitations resonates deeply with everyone who's striving for professional growth. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Jessica Panetta. All right, Jessica, clearly I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm so excited to be here too.
Heck yeah. So listeners can't necessarily see your background. You and I are obviously on video, but you've got such a cool background, a moss art version of your logo. Anyone, go check it out on YouTube. It's very cool. But Jessica, clearly you're crafty. Clearly you're passionate. Fill in those gaps beyond the bio for us. Give us your story of how the heck you ended up doing all this awesome stuff.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. And like you mentioned, I've been a registered dietitian for well over a decade at this point. And so what that means is that I provide medical nutrition therapy to patients so that we could prevent disease, treat various medical conditions. And so what that looks like is typically working in clinical settings like hospitals, doctors' offices, and other clinical environments. And so I'm grouped into a category of healthcare workers known as allied health professionals. So what that means is that I work alongside doctors and nurses as part of that healthcare team to deliver patient care. And it's actually a pretty big group of health professionals, so dietitians being one, but others include physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, social workers, and that's just mentioning a few of this amazing group of healthcare workers. And so speaking from my own experience, many of us allied health professionals are long hours, maybe undervalued, underpaid. And so in 2020, when the pandemic hit, it sort of exacerbated all of those pain points for many of us. And so at the time in 2020, as mentioned in my bio, I was working as director of clinical nutrition. And with 2 kids under the age of 4 at the time, I had them home from school when the school shut down. And I had to step away from that role, which at the time was paying my highest hourly salary. So not an easy decision, but something that had to be made for myself and my family. And what that break allowed me to do was really reflect on what I wanted when I re-entered the workplace. What did I want that to look like? What priorities did I have in mind that needed to be met by whatever job I would wind up taking when I re-entered work? And so during this period of reflection and really just focusing on what it is that I would want. I was listening to podcasts. I was reading books. One of the books I read is called Happiness is the Way, and it's written by Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. Played a really important part in helping me to reframe my thinking of how can I work with what I already have to absolutely slam dunk, find exactly what I need to live the life that I want to be living from here on out. And so I was listening to a podcast and someone mentioned Upwork, one of the guests on this particular podcast. And I was like, what is Upwork? What is freelance work? I'm completely unfamiliar with that, coming from working in hospitals and doctors' offices. And so I said, let me explore this freelance thing and see what it might lead to. And so I put myself on Upwork, I created a profile, and I started getting gigs pretty quickly. And they were really exciting opportunities. Working with clients to do work that I had never done previously in any of my prior jobs. And so I very quickly found success in the freelance world. And I thought, well, you know what? Every other allied health professional needs to know about this. I want them to know that this possibility exists, and I want to help them follow this path and succeed in it. And so today I have my own business, like you mentioned, Prosper Allied Health, where I do just that. I empower, I provide confidence, resources to help other allied health professionals figure out how to leverage their credentials to pursue freelance work. And so I'm, clearly on this mission to get the word out there and help these professionals continue to use their hard-earned credentials, but live life on their terms with the work that they're doing.
Yes, Jessica, so many elements of that story that I'm so excited to dive into. The first thing that I really want to give you credit for, though, which I don't think people really appreciate about the freelancer's journey, is this notion of basically permission, where you, for one reason or another, obviously you had been a working professional for a very long time, and you didn't need or wait for, I think that's the important concept here, you didn't wait for anyone else's permission for you to start monetizing and charging for the things that you already know that you're good at. You basically said, hey, there's a possibility of freelance work. I don't need permission from anyone else to go do it. If I want to start monetizing my skills, my experience, I can do it, and I'm going to do it. And you just started taking on clients. I feel like most people don't even get over that initial hump because they're used to someone else dictating their worth, someone else sending them or depositing a check into their bank account every single week. Right. You just said, I'm going to go do it myself. Talk to us about that mental frame, because I feel like a lot of people are probably like, Jessica, well, can you just do that? Can you just start taking on clients? Walk us through that part in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the most exciting part, because what freelance work actually allows you to do is reinvent yourself. That's the first thing I realized. Putting yourself out there as a freelancer, you have to pinpoint what is the skill set you want to bring forth? What are the types of projects and types of clients you want to be working with and working for? And so when you put yourself in the mindset of determining your own value, what skills do you already have that you can leverage? What credentials, what education, what work history or experience can you use and put forth in a new light with your new self, your new version of yourself? And then what you find is that the possibilities are actually really limitless. And I'm not exaggerating. They're actually limitless. I have many versions of myself as Jessica, the freelancer. I do all sorts of consultation work for different types of clients. So the other thing is you don't have to choose just one path. You can actually dabble and experiment. And so it's really about embracing that idea that you don't need that permission from anyone, any exterior source. You just have to know with confidence that you already have enough. You've already invested enough in yourself, and you've already put the time in to get and gain these skills. And you just have to move forward with that, sort of bold understanding of what your value is determined by yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That is such an important lesson that takes so many of us entrepreneurs a long time to, obviously we can hear it, but to embrace it, to understand it, to act upon it. I think that's really the wisdom that you're imparting on so many listeners, myself included here today, Jessica. I'm sure you remind yourself of that all the time, but I do want to talk about how scary it must be for freelancers hopping on Upwork. I mean, I can very clearly from this side of the desk, I can tell you that anytime I list a job, a proposal, or a project on Upwork, I get at least 30 proposals within the first 2 hours of listing it. And a lot of people will probably say, Jessica, well, I've got skills and I know it and I value me, but how the heck am I going to convince a stranger on the internet to actually hire me and pay me? Walk us through that battle, because I'm sure that not only did you experience it firsthand, but you help other skilled professionals accomplish that for the first time in their careers as well.
That's exactly right. And I think the biggest piece is authenticity. There are a lot of, I'm actually a client on there as well. So for Prosper Allied Health, I do hire freelancers too. So I know both sides of the coin. And so I know exactly what you mean, Brian, when you say there's a flood of responses that come in. But very quickly, as a client, okay, I'm wearing my client hat. When I'm looking at these proposals I'm getting, you could very quickly see who is authentic, who copy and pasted something from ChatGPT or maybe just a message that they've used 100 times. And I could very quickly identify and vet out who's the real deal, who's in it to really help me, and who is the actual skills that can be used for my job. So now I'm going to flip to freelancer Jessica, and I'm going to put that hat back on. And so when you're applying for these jobs, being authentic, speaking directly to the client and the project that they're posting to hire for, identifying exactly what experience you have that you could bring to the table for that client, you have to highlight that in such a way that puts you at the top of the stack to get an interview. That's the first step, just getting on camera with a client. And then, you bring forth authentic energy and dedication to every client that you take, every project that you apply for. And I do have to touch on what's nice about freelance work is that you can just apply to the jobs that you're passionate about. And so that helps you bring that authenticity forward. And what I mean by that is let's say there's a gig for nutrient analysis for 2,000 recipes, and that's not something that I want to do right now. I'm just going to overlook that. I'm not even going to apply to that. But then if I see a job post for something that's directly in my wheelhouse, lights me up, gets me excited, and then I apply for that. That really helps the situation when you're a freelancer applying for a job so you can get at the top of that stack.
Yes, I cannot echo that enough, Jessica. I love that you just called that out. Yes, you are spot on. So many people, ChatGPT is great in so many ways, but especially on Upwork, I cannot tell you how many people just copy and paste from ChatGPT. They almost all sound alike. Kudos to ChatGPT
Yes.
for how good it sounds, but also how consistent it sounds across, right. 20 different proposals. So I love that you called that out. Jessica, I'm going to put you on the spot here because I obviously really love your model, and I love the fact that you are preaching this model and helping so many other people take advantage of it. But I think one thing we need to focus on more within the world of entrepreneurial conversations that we have in public is the real stuff behind the scenes. And I think one of those real things is uninformed optimism, where I always make the argument that any idea we have, like here we are talking about success via freelancing on Upwork, and uninformed optimism makes it sound so easy. If we talk about starting an Etsy shop, Jessica, it will sound easy. But of course, when you get into it, nothing is easy. There are difficulties to every path. Talk to us about some of those early hurdles that most people don't realize that's an inevitable part of the freelancing journey. If someone's saying, this sounds so easy, I'm going to create an Upwork profile and start submitting proposals, where does it get hard? What's the real hard stuff that we have to overcome?
Absolutely. So first, I want to pause to say that nothing is actually hard. Everything may seem like a challenge, but challenges are overcome. And so with the right tools, which includes mindset, but also tech tools, right? With the right tools, having those in your tool belt, any early initial challenge will be overcome. It's a temporary discomfort. And so when you can push through with that mindset, out of the gate, you're already going to feel better about that overwhelm. But from a technical standpoint, what I would say is I love infrastructure and I love operations. And here's what I mean by that. You can't just say, I'm going to create a digital asset and sell it on Etsy, right? There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to bring that idea to fruition. And so you need to have infrastructure in place. You need to have a one-page business plan, for example, if it's a business. But if you're a freelancer looking to start out, you need to make sure you have a very crystal clear image of what you're bringing forward as a freelancer. What is the service you provide and how are you unique? What makes it different from other freelancers providing a similar service? Have that in writing. Have a Google document, put it in the Google Drive, and just start building up this infrastructure. The operations piece, how are you going to pull this off? How will you submit these deliverables to your clients? What are you using from a tech standpoint that's going to help you accomplish that every single time? So you want to put in place repeatable frameworks that you can apply to every project, no matter what the actual project is or the scale of it. And so what I think, to answer your question, what to round back and sort of close the circle here, having a game plan, okay, to put it in layman's terms, having a game plan in writing, that's your infrastructure, and the how-to, those are your operations. So having those key components in place will help to set you up for success.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And you're right. It's so important. It's been such a theme in our content here in 2023 is that if you don't have a roadmap, well, of course, you're going to end up in a random place, probably at the roadblock or at a dead end. So I love the fact that you called that out. And obviously, you are someone who practices what you preach. You love processes. You love tools that support you in all of those things. I want to ask you about Upwork as a platform. You said the word earlier, really early on in our episode here today, of possibilities. Jessica, I would argue that most people, you and I obviously love Upwork because we use it in all facets of our business, but most people think of Upwork and they're like, yeah, people hire graphic designers, they hire web developers on there. They don't realize the scope of jobs available. Can you shine a big ol' light on the possibilities on Upwork as far as cool projects that you've seen, that you've done, that you've seen some of your clients and students do, or other places that you even just, maybe it's not even within your realm and you go, holy cow, that's cool. I didn't realize people hire for Upwork on there.
That's exactly right. There are so many possibilities. And this part really excites me because for allied health professionals specifically, it is not known that this exists for many allied health professionals. We're very much so used to coming out of school and going into these jobs that are posted on Indeed and all the other job finder websites. And we just sort of shoe into this and follow this path. But on Upwork, you can work with a global client base and work on really cool projects, spanning everything from writing gigs to working with developers for innovation. You can do public speaking, educational workshops, working with data and analytics, being a consultant and giving your perspective as an allied health professional with real world work experience helping patients. And so just to highlight some of the opportunities that are ever changing on that platform alone. And Brian, we're just talking about one online platform. There are several, not to mention in-person freelance work that allied health professionals can do right within their local community. But back to Upwork and to answer your question, some of the opportunities I'm seeing on there. It's easy for me to talk about what I've done. And to highlight on a few, one of which is very exciting. It was one of the initial jobs that I was hired to do when I was starting out. And it was to work with a nonprofit organization aiming to prevent chronic kidney disease, to help them put together an evidence-based nutrition program that they could roll out across the United States in their mission to prevent chronic kidney disease. And what that opportunity did was it allowed for me to walk through doors I never knew existed, let alone that I could open. And what eventually wound up happening is that turned into a long-term client. And in that working relationship, I was able to showcase other skill sets that I possess, but had never really utilized before in my previous work as a clinical dietitian. And I was appointed to be the executive director of that nonprofit organization months later. So an incredible opportunity. And that's just one example. I've also worked with a number of clients for one-off projects or short-term needs, being a consultant for their the formulation of their new product that they're making. And so the opportunities can be whatever you want them to be for your needs. So if someone is going to keep their 9-to-5 job as a clinical allied health professional, that's fine. You could just find one-off projects to, one and done. You complete them and that's it. Or perhaps you're looking for a little bit more of a commitment, and you'd be able to find opportunities for long-term, part-time, or even full-time work.
Yes, Jessica, I'm so excited and happy and grateful that you shared those tangible examples with us, because a lot of people probably won't realize that point that you just made, which is even if you take a one-off project on Upwork, very frequently, myself included from my own personal experience, that will turn into a long-term client for you. And in your real life examples, that's so cool, deepening the relationships, because obviously when you deliver, when you do great work, there's no way that person's going to say, Jessica, you were great. Thanks for that. See you later. They're going to want to continue that if you want to. Again, it's all at your liberty and at your choice. So I absolutely love that. I want to talk about something that I'm sure is scary for a lot of freelancers, and it's something that I'm sure you get asked about a lot. I hear this question a lot within regards to the content we have here on this podcast, and that is obviously pricing. Pricing affects every single business. Sometimes I wonder how many freelancers on Upwork think it's a race to the bottom, and they can see, here's the average proposal price, and they will go a little bit lower than that. And then the next one will go a little bit lower. It's a race to the bottom. And obviously that's not the way that we want to be valued as entrepreneurs, as freelancers. Talk to us about pricing, especially for so many. I'm sure what you see with allied health professionals is they don't even know how to price out of the gates as they're starting from scratch. How do you navigate that?
Absolutely. So it's a layered answer. And so I'm going to start with the top layer, which is that, believe it or not, most of the job posts put out there for allied health professionals, so dietitians, physical therapists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, so on, they're pretty decent out of the gate. And I think it's because the landscape is changing. And as you touched on earlier, typically freelance work, you think of hiring marketing or graphic design or web developers, et cetera, those type of niche industries. And so right now is a really pivotal moment for allied health professionals to put themselves out there as a freelancer, because it's not a huge pool of talent. There's not a ton of competition for allied health professionals. And the posts, when they first hit, that gig is posted by the client, the initial starting rate is actually really decent, and oftentimes more than what we make per hour in a clinical setting. But however, like you mentioned, there are still some clients who do look to hire talent for the cheapest rate possible. Well, guess what? That's not the type of client you want to work with. So stay away from that. You're better off. Part of what I do in helping allied health professionals become freelancers is I help them vet out the clients. It's very important to make sure that you follow a list that I provide to make sure that the client is the right type of client you want to be working with. And that's one of the criteria. If the client is just looking to hire someone for the cheapest amount possible, they're probably not going to value you the way that you now know you need to be valued. Because remember, you've determined that for yourself. And so you would just steer clear of that type of a gig altogether. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's a very important recommendation. Again, I think so many things we're talking about here today, Jessica, are things that take way too long for us to learn as entrepreneurs. So gosh, do I hope that you are shortcutting listeners' success journeys, because these are important lessons that, Jessica, I don't know about you, but I learned it firsthand through undervaluing myself, finding terrible clients, and then learning that lesson the hard way. So hopefully you are saving entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs those lessons by learn from what Jessica is sharing with us here today. And with all of that said, obviously we've talked about the actual proposal. You talked about the importance of authenticity. You've talked about vetting the actual client. Is this someone that we want to work with? Not just that they want to work with us. What do you think are the most important criteria or the most important elements and factors in successfully landing a gig? Obviously, the proposal is one element of it. The price is one element of it. How else do we start getting those gigs on Upwork?
Absolutely. So all those elements are super important, but I would say the other factors would be making sure that you set time aside every day to scroll the landscape and see what's out there, because it's ever changing every day throughout the day. And so it's important to invest time in actively looking and seeking out those opportunities to land on online platforms. But the other thing I would say, another element, which is not directly related to Upwork, but it is, part of this process, is networking. So not only should you put yourself out there on Upwork, but also on social media platforms like LinkedIn, for example. Let your network know what you're doing. Cast a wide net. Let the people that you are already connected with know that you're now providing these contract-based services to contribute to projects or organizations. And so when you do that, you're also expanding your net of ways to capture freelance work. So I would caution a new freelancer to just stick to Upwork. It's a very important platform, and it's how I started out. So I do use that in my framework and the work that I do. But I do want to highlight the fact that there are other ways to capture freelance work. And so I say tapping into your network and expanding your network. Now that you've stepped into this new role, make sure that you connect with others in this industry that you're pursuing in your freelance work to make sure that you're making future connections to secure work as well.
Yeah, really good advice there, Jessica. I'll be honest, as someone who gets to interview a lot of amazing entrepreneurs, so frequently that's the story that we hear from guests is they're like, well, I just posted on either Facebook or LinkedIn and people said, oh, Jessica, I didn't realize that's what you were doing these days. Let's have a conversation. So yes, letting people know in your existing network and expanding your network, even just what you're doing, such a simple strategy, but so often it's very effective. Jessica, I feel like we're only scratching the tip of the iceberg with you here today, but I can't let you go yet without asking you about the notion of freelancing versus running a business, because I find it so interesting. You're really at that intersection. You started out obviously as a freelancer. Now you're building a really awesome business that helps so many other people. Heck, that even helps other freelancers. What have you noticed from your vantage point about that difference? What are the simplicities, the pros, the cons of freelancing versus what has that transition been like to business owner, to real CEO and founder?
I'm so glad you brought that up. This is something I've been speaking about a lot lately in my social media posts. And I like to use this bridge analogy. So if you envision a bridge, you know that there's two pillars and then the crossing. So if the left pillar is a traditional job in a clinical setting for someone, or that's in the case of allied health professionals, but let's expand it to anyone working a 9 to 5. That's the left pillar. And then entrepreneurship is on the other side. Being a business owner is that right pillar. So how can you get there without just jumping over the river? Some people do, and it works. And a lot of people land in the water, right? So what is a safer crossing? Well, let's use that bridge analogy and envision that freelance work is the crossing and the bridge itself. And so it's really a stepping stone for you to get your feet wet as a new entrepreneur. Because when you're an independent contractor, you have to figure out time management, client relationships. You need to put the tech in place for operations in order to be a remote or even an in-person freelancer. And so you get to hone in on these business skills while you're getting paid by someone to complete a project, and you're not totally risking it because you're applying for gigs that there's already a need, right? But the the other really cool way to look at it too is you can actually you could beta test the services that you would offer as a business owner as a freelancer. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I wanted to provide nutrition counseling to schools on the side, and maybe my aim is helping children make better food choices in the cafeteria, right? Let's say that's my very niche service that I'd like to offer as a business. And like any business idea, an idea is just an idea until you prove that there's a demand for it and that there's a paying client on the other end. And so as a freelancer, as a contract worker, what I could do is I can, in a very low risk way, I'm not going to invest in the LLC just yet. Not going to claim the domain or the social handles. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to reach out to schools to see, would they hire me as a 1099 contract worker to provide that specific service? And if the answer is yes, well, I'm beta testing. I'm proving that there's a demand. I'm able to work through the process to deliver that service to the best of my ability and make my customer happy, all before I formalize as a business entity. And so I'm really passionate about spreading that knowledge as well, because I think it's underutilized by many entrepreneurs, this idea of this bridge analogy and testing the waters before you go all in.
Ooh, Jessica, I'll tell you what, as someone who is a visual learner, I love that image of the bridge and the fact that we can, the ultimate proof of concept. Everyone always talks about proof of concept in business, and they do, focus groups and they send out surveys. And I'm just like, see if someone will pay you. That is ultimately the only proof of concept that absolutely matters. And I love the fact that you're right. Freelancing, being a 1099 independent contractor, an external person that someone hires, that is the proof of concept right there. It is the actual building blocks, the bridge to a business. So I love that illustration. And Jessica, I already know that everyone who's listening to this is going to have the same takeaway, which is, gosh, I need to get on Upwork. I need to start proactively getting out there and getting clients, whether they're still in their 9 to 5. I think that's what makes this episode and your story really special is everybody, wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, not only can you take action on the things that Jessica is teaching us today, but you should be taking action on all of this. So with all of that in mind, Jessica, what's your best advice? What's the takeaway, the action that you hope every listener takes from here in the pursuit of action, in the pursuit of getting more clients, in the pursuit of monetizing the skills, whether they're an allied health professional or they're in a 9 to 5 as a professional in another industry? What's the thing that they can and should do from here?
Absolutely. So since you love analogies, I do too, and visualization, I'm going to use that for this final takeaway. And what I'd actually like to do is challenge the listeners who are tuning in, a good challenge. And so here's what it is. For 1 week, and you're gonna mark this on the calendar, okay? You're gonna make this happen. For just 1 week, I want you to walk around with a confidence mindset. And so I can't just leave you hanging there and tell you to do that without knowing how exactly you do that. So here's what you're gonna do. You are going to imagine that your brain and the 2 hemispheres in the brain are representative of a negative side and a positive side, okay? We're gonna keep it really simple. And so thoughts that come from the negative side, those thoughts are going to talk you out of what you're pursuing as an entrepreneur. Those thoughts will be barrier thoughts like, I can't do this because of that, and so I'm not going to do it. But the positive side of your brain, what the thoughts generated from that side will say, you know what, I'm going to try. I actually do have the skill set to do that. This is just a challenge that I can overcome. I'm going to keep going at it anyway. And so during this week-long challenge, what you're going to do is, as thoughts come to you, you're going to first determine, what is this? Is this a positive or a negative thought? Where's it coming from? Which side of my brain? And if it's a positive thought, I want you to follow it. I want you to listen to it for that week, and I want you to see where it takes you. And if it's a negative thought, I want you, after you've identified it as a negative thought, I want you to acknowledge it. Okay, I hear you, but then release it. And off it goes. And you're just committing to this for 1 week, which you can do very easily. And so when you come out of that week, I want you to see how far have you come along? How far have you moved that needle in what you're going after as an entrepreneur? And then maybe you might decide let me extend it by one more week. I'm going to follow Jessica's challenge and I'm going to make this a 2-week challenge. And I want you to see where it takes you. No pressure, just pay attention and challenge yourself to commit to that.
Yes, that level of self-awareness is so important for all of us, not only as entrepreneurs. This is something that affects all of us in life. And Jessica, I would imagine for you, this extrapolates into motherhood. It's going to be such a key factor in the way that you raise your kids, which is going to set them up for success. And I'm going to pose this to listeners that I'd love for you to take action on Jessica's challenge, because I'll tell you what, as a podcast host for over 700 episodes, 7+ years of doing this, most people will not complete this challenge. And that is exactly why most people will not be successful. This is one of those tidbits where you're getting a glimpse into a successful entrepreneur who's laying you down a challenge because she knows that this works. So if you want to bridge that gap between where you are now and success, these are the things that actually make it happen. So Jessica, I love and appreciate that challenge that you dropped on listeners. At this point, I know they're going to be chomping at the bit to see more of your work, all the awesome things that you're doing. I want to plug your website as well. You have such awesome resources on there for allied health professionals. This is a great giveaway that I think you do. Launch your freelance career for free in just one day with our essential guide. You've got so many amazing resources. So drop those links on us, Jessica. Where should listeners go from here?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been so much fun putting those resources together. And my website is prosperalliedhealth.com. And like Brian mentioned, you can head there and right on the homepage, you can download and grab that freebie guide to go ahead and get yourself started freelancing for free in one day. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. And the handle there is my name, Jessica Panetta, RD. I'm also on Instagram at Prosper Allied Health, and you can follow along there too. So thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate having this opportunity, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in.
Heck yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are dropping those links down below in the show notes, wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, so you don't have to memorize those. Jessica's website is at prosperalliedhealth.com. We're also linking to her personal LinkedIn as well as the Instagram that she mentioned, so don't be shy in reaching out. And Jessica, you're so kind. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks, Brian.